Thank you for pressing that button, whoever pressed that button. Yes. But yeah, so just to introduce ourselves, I'll start off. My name is Akshita. I am a senior. I am graduating in like 2 weeks. That's crazy. My pronouns are she, hers. I am a film and rhetoric double major. So I'm not actually in the EECS department, even though I think this event was listed in the EECS events. But yeah.
All right. Hello, I'm Alex. I use he, him pronouns. I'm also a fourth year, graduating soon. I'm an EECS major, and yeah, very excited to speak with you all.
And hello, I am Ethan. My pronouns are also he, him, his, and I am a computer science major and a junior who will be here next year.
Yes. You will not see me or Alex if you do decide to take this decal. But yes, more on what that means in a sec. But yeah, we can go ahead and start the presentation with those introductions out of the way. Oh, there we go. So a little bit more about us. So we are, as you saw, UCBUGG. It's kind of a funny name, I know. So that stands for the UC Berkeley Undergraduate Graphics Group. We don't actually have, like, our organization doesn't have anything to do with bugs at all. That's actually the entomology student organization. So hopefully you didn't go into this call with the expectation of something being about bugs, but I think it was just listed with the title of the event, so you should be fine. Anyways, so I said organization just now, but UCBUGG is actually not so much a student organization as it is a decal. So decal stands for Democratic Education at Cal, and what that means is that it's basically a course that is run and organized and taught by undergraduate students like us. We all teach this class. This is a 20-year-old course. This is actually the 20th anniversary of our decal, so we've been around for quite a long time. I'm pretty sure this course is older than you, which is crazy to say, but yeah, that's weird. And also, last thing about the decal course is that it is offered every fall and spring. So if you do leave this call and you're really interested in taking the course, but you're unable to find time in your schedule for whatever reason this upcoming fall, then feel free to take it at any point during your college career. It's always going to be offered, and it's always there for you if you are interested for whatever reason. So now that you have the background of exactly what UCBUGG is logistically, in terms of course content, our course teaches students the entire animation pipeline from start to end. Over the course of a semester in UCBUGG, you will learn everything that you could possibly need to know to make a basic animated short film. And alongside learning how to make an animated short film, like in terms of elements, you actually make an animated short film over the course of the semester. So right now, for students right now, the semester is just about ending. We're in our last week of classes going into like our dead week or reading week. And so for our students, their final films will be actually due this coming Friday. So not tomorrow, but like the Friday after that. So that's going to be super fun. But yeah, so over the course of the semester, you basically learn how to and build your own animated short film about whatever you want. You guys pitch stories. It's basically as much creativity as you have, you can make a story about it. And it's also, this course is available to all students of backgrounds and experiences, regardless of like whether you guys are like EECS or CS. Again, I know the event was listed under the EECS department. Well, like I said, I'm personally a film and rhetoric major. Like that's the farthest you can ever get from CS, not gonna lie, just like in terms of like literal content. We've had students from like CNR who are like conservation resource studies. We've had a lot of art students. We have architecture students. Like basically, it doesn't really matter what major you are or what you're studying specifically. If you're interested in learning about storytelling, video only in animation, or just really like really big animation fans or really big movie fans, or if you want to learn more about the technical aspect of it as well, there's a place for everyone here. So we don't want there to be any kind of like restrictions based on like where you come from specifically. Anyone can learn how to make an animated film. So on the note of anyone can make an animated film, what makes an animated film? So just like on the slide alone, there's a bunch of different films that we can see here that are all done in different styles, different color palettes, from different years. So like we have like your 3D films on the top with like How to Train Your Dragon. Spider-Verse is a special case there where it's very stylized and has a lot of 2D effects and a lot of different like visual elements to make it look very comic-like. We have something like The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is a stop motion film, which like you literally have physical models in front of you that you're moving, taking a picture, and putting it all together so you get that motion. So that's totally different too. And then you have also your classic 2D stuff with like Spirited Away, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, stuff like that. And that's obviously just like hand drawing animation using some digital tools to get everything to move smoothly. So there's just a lot of variety on this page, TLDR. So how did we get to all this point? What kinds of work go into all of these different kinds of films? I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty of all of that because that's what you get to learn if you do decide to take our course this coming fall. But for all of these cases, even though they are different, it takes a lot of hard work from several different kinds of people. So like we have in this slide, there's like biz dev artists who are doing a lot of the design and character designers. There's people working on animation specifically, that's like moving characters around in the various softwares in order to get them to move. There's people working, I think this person is either working on like hair sim or like a version of hair sim. So like that's like getting the hair to move the way you want it to and like flow in the wind as you see in so many modern CG films. There's just a lot of different roles that you can really pursue in animation. I feel like a lot of students don't really realize just how much goes into different films. Like there's a job for like literally everything. Like a person's hair is a job, a person's clothes is another job. Like there's just so much content here, and through taking this course you'll be able to learn about like what makes each of these different kinds of tasks in the overall goal of making an animated film really special, and you'll be able to find which ones you like the best. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of different elements that go into making an animated film. This technically isn't all of them, but this is the most like a very basic outline of like different steps that go into making an animated film, and this would be considered your curriculum, which if you are to take our class in the fall. So we always start with just introducing the students to Autodesk Maya, which is the 3D software that we use to teach our class. It is an industry standard software, and it allows, and within Maya itself, you could actually make an entire short film. It offers all the tools you would need to do all of these steps. We do use some additional software to supplement our practice though, like Pixar's RenderMan for our shaders and rendering. And also we use Adobe Suite to enhance our shading and also for post-production. But yes, basically these steps that we have here, we're going to go into more detail, but just to say them out loud for the sake of saying them out loud, because I can do that. We have pre-production, modeling, shading, rigging, animation, lighting, effects, and post-production, which consists of rendering and compositing. But yeah, so this is where we're like in our presentation here, that is the art of making animated film. We're going to talk about a little bit more about exactly what all of these elements mean. And then we're going to show you using an example of a film that some of us worked on this past fall. But yeah, that's where we're going. So to begin with pre-production, I'll hand it over to Alex.
All right, so for these 3D animated shorts, like all pieces of like animation and media, we're going to start with pre-production, which is just making art in service of our story that we want to tell. So figuring out what story you want to do, and also just like drawing out storyboards, character sheets, making animatics to figure out the rough timing of our animation. So this part is like very artist heavy, and it's also just really fun to just like go through all these different ideas. So everything's kind of just like a rough draft of this part, and you're trying to figure out exactly what works and what kind of story and what kind of visuals you want to have. All right.
Okay, next up, back to me, we're at modeling. So obviously in the pre-production and biz dev section of your pipeline, you're drawing a lot and designing a lot of different elements that you want to see in your final film. Modeling is the first step that you need to execute in order to actually get those all those elements that you want to have into a position where you can actually have them in your film. So modeling is basically being the process of creating different 3D models, as the name implies, and assets for your environments and characters. So it's heavily linked with pre-production with, for example, you see this character on the right, Judy Hopps image in T-Pose. So basically you would make a character sheet of this character, and then you would use it directly to influence the model to make sure you have all the features right that you would want it to have. And additionally, you can see in this image of the up house, there's a bunch of different elements listed and a bunch of different information about like how exactly the house should be. So like from this design element, you're then able to implement those different design choices into whatever 3D software you're using, in our case Maya, and you're able to add those details into the actual model. And your goal with character modeling or with filmmaking and animated filmmaking in general is creating these believable worlds and relatable characters. So after you model everything that you would need to have, you want to also like be able to put it all together. It should all look like it belongs in this same world, same space that you are building through the process of creating your film, right? So you want to make sure that there's consistency there. And then the process of putting all your models together into a scene is called set dressing. And that's also a really fun part of the pipeline because it's basically just making your 3D world. But yes, we will move on now, passing it over to Ethan. Oh, never mind. There's another section. Apologies. So to go in a little bit more detail about modeling, there's two different kinds. Well, there's lots of different kinds of modeling, but for our sakes, we'll talk about two. First of which is organic modeling, which is shapes found in nature like rocks, plants, humans, animals, etc. It's basically like focusing on elements that aren't as like angular or like man-made or heavily constructed. And this is often done with digital sculpting programs or with regular 3D software if you're able to get those curves looking really nice. And then hard surface modeling, I kind of alluded to this already, is more like man-made construction stuff that has a lot of angles. So any household props, buildings, vehicles. We see like this kitchen set, for example. A lot of this is going to be done in hard surface modeling because you want to make sure those edges are really clear. And these are often made from basic geometric shapes like prisms and cubes. So a lot of the complexity to get like the really nice curves and shapes in the organic modeling, you don't need that as much in the hard surface modeling. That being said, it's still really important to put a lot of effort and thought into design with the hard surface models because you still want them to look believable and seem like they are able to like, again, fit into the same world and space as your hard surface, as your organic models. Okay, now I'm passing it to Ethan for shading.
Thank you. All right, so shading is the point where we go from these like smooth gray models that you see in the image above here, as well as those in that kitchen and the gray model in that sculpting tools. And we go from that to these really beautiful, detailed 3D objects that you see in the lower photograph, in the lower render, which looks just like a photograph in this case. So we can just bring these completely basic shapes and add details like textures, literal surface variations on a certain mesh, and also colors and like shininess, which is known as specular. And we take all of those things and model how light's interacting with each of these surfaces, and you can make them look realistic, stylized, somewhere in between. Could we go to the next slide? Actually, yeah.
Sorry, my cursor was not working. There we go.
Thanks. So as you can see here, we have everywhere from this image down here, which is from a short that's actually modeled in 3D, but is shaded to have a style that could actually be like a 2D animated film. The one with the table in the kitchen. And basically how that's done is through something called cell shading, also known as toon shading, where light isn't actually simulated, but is just used to give like the correct colors and shaping to each of these models. On the other hand, you can see above that image, we can also simulate light directly and use shaders that calculate more realistically how light's interacting with the surfaces to create our lighting effects. And in Spider-Verse, it's somewhere in between where it's you're getting those realistic lighting effects, but also lots of stylization.
All right, and the next step in the pipeline is rigging, which is kind of like attaching a puppet skeleton sort of thing to our 3D characters so that we can go and give them the illusion of motion and move them around and control them. So it's basically just an easy way to make it so that these character models can be manipulated by animators and moving around in 3D space.
Okay, next up is animation. You all should be at least familiar with this to a degree. So it's basically creating the illusion of movement and life in your short and getting all your characters and objects to move the way you want to. So your goal here is to create really believable characters through emotion, weight and volume, personality, however you want your character to act and how you want them to be received by your audience. You would basically be affecting the movement in order to get that effect. And you would go, and obviously you start in the pre-production phase where you just have like single still images in your storyboards, and you're taking those and you're adding motion and nuances in order to create these more believable full movements. I mean, there's this comment about storyboard Elsa with like more scared and reluctant, and animated Elsa taking that and being a lot more like confident and a little bit sassy even. With animation in particular, there are a lot of different principles that go into being able to create believable animation. There's a really good video about this that we do not have time to show, but these are some screenshots from it just to kind of tell you what the 12 elements are. There are squash and stretch, staging, anticipation, straight ahead versus pose to pose, follow through, which we're going to be talking about in our demo a little bit, slow in, slow out, having the movement follow arcs, having secondary actions to emphasize the first action, timing, which is basically like when exactly actions are happening, exaggeration, which is just like stretching your character in order to get more like appeal and believability, having solid drawings, and this doesn't apply so much for 2D, but for 3D, but in 2D, you want to make sure your characters don't look really flat. You want to make sure that they have like volume in order to actually be able to execute movements properly. And appeal, does your character like, is your audience able to connect with your character emotionally? Do they care about what your character is doing? Are they drawn to that character? All of these are super important. And again, obviously just after this one presentation, you're not going to have like a mastery over all of these principles, but they're all really important for the animation process.
So the next portion here, it ties a lot back into what I was just talking about with shading, where we actually define how the surfaces interact with light. But in order to actually see that, we need to actually shine those virtual lights into our scene. And so this helps us create those real life lighting conditions or ways to like emphasize certain things in the scene with artificial lighting, or even like hidden lights that wouldn't show up in real life. You can do a lot in CG that you couldn't do in real lighting setups. And so that gives us a lot of wiggle room in order to add our cohesiveness to the scene, bring it together, define emotions, and really tell our viewer where to look, and allow the scene to kind of emphasize certain objects that are more integral to the story.
All right, next up is visual effects. This part can be very technical heavy. It's just doing a bunch of math to drive some simulations to mimic the real world behavior of a bunch of different things like fluids, hair, particles. So it's like stuff that is too complicated to model or animate by hand.
Okay, next up we have rendering, and this is basically how your whole, like everything that we just talked about comes together into a 2D image. Like we're working in 3D space this entire time. We have all this lighting and all these colors and shading that we've created. How to get that into the 2D image is basically through a process called path tracing, which is basically simulating like the light and how it's going to interact in with all the different materials. And this is going to allow us to get a full 2D image. Additionally, you want to think about like global illumination, which is basically like how the light is bouncing off of all of the different objects that you have in your scene. So you can see on the bottom one in particular, like this one has the is a combination of like both the direct and indirect lighting and able to get the most like clear, nice image. And also you want to think about sampling, which is basically like if you are sampling at 1 pixel per rate, you're going to have a really pixelated, what we call a noisy image. And the higher you raise a sample rate in your rendering process, the clearer and nicer your image is going to be. But that's also going to mean that your renders are going to that being able to get these images via rendering is going to take longer periods of time. Fun fact, there's a scene from like to get one frame from the film Coco of the like City of the Dead, it took like multiple like days to be able to get a single frame of animation. But yeah, it's a fun part of the process where everything kind of comes together.
Speaking of coming together, basically after you get those renders, that's where everything finally comes together into your video editing software. You put together a bunch of layers along with the VFX aspects that you created and compile all of these things into a final video. And so you want to do your best to combine each of those layers in that software so that they look cohesive and build your scene for that final cut.
Any questions briefly? That was a lot of information. Feel free to unmute, raise your hand, ask in chat, whatever you need to. How are we doing? Do y'all know? I don't know how Zoom like intended students at Berkeley know. Oh, I went to the next slide. I didn't mean to do that. But oh, there's another person who came in. That's cool. Are we all doing okay? Can we get a thumbs up from like the reacts if you're all having a good time and you don't regret coming to this presentation? Hopefully we're all learning. I see an applause react. I feel very validated. Thank you for the applause react. Close enough. So anyways, with that, if there are, wait, I see a message in chat. Oh, wonderful presentation. Okay, thank you. Okay, I feel very validated. Okay, with that, we are gonna go into our demo at Godspeed. But what are we demoing exactly? Prior experience required for the program? Yes, no, none of those. Oh, whoever sent that sent that to the waiting room. There's a lot of words happening right now. But yes, we're gonna go into our demo because we are gonna zoom through this because I want to have more time for questions at the end. But yeah, so in fall 2019, the facilitators, who are basically the students that teach the program, worked on a short called Powered Up. And so we're going to kind of walk you through like some of the production elements that we use to make this short happen, and we're going to show the short at the end. So to start, we have pre-production always. So we start with like having our character design. So this is one of the forms of our characters, and also kind of finding reference of like inspirational images that we think would help in our own design of the character. We're not plagiarizing or anything, but just finding inspiration. This is like a Pinterest board, like what you think will help inspire you in your own creativity. So like this image is from viz dev for Hero from Big Hero 6's room. So obviously this is a really cluttered room. There's a lot of details related to the character. It's just like helps to kind of guide our design. So we're going to quickly look at the storyboards for Powered Up. I'm going to, again, speed right through these. We'll watch the whole story at the end. So basically, okay, we have this girl. She's tired. She's doing work. I think we can all relate to that. And we see this battery image, so she's like out of power. So yes, she has no power and she's going. So she thinks she rummages through a drawer. She picks up a Game Boy, and the camera turns, and now she's holding a sword. So now she's this wonderful avatar doing in a game, doing game-related things like killing enemies and getting XP from all of the enemies. And then we see her in a panel on the screen running, or we see her feet running. She's running through the frame in a lot of different frames. And then we see this fire enemy. Obviously, she wants to take that out. So we have this little Pokemon-esque transition where we have like the over-the-shoulder angle, the classic one. And she's going to jump from this panel into this other panel and hop out of frame in order to beat the enemy. And there she does. She does like a drop kick on it. And yay, she did it. But oh no, there's another enemy in the other panel. And she gets kicked out of that panel into oblivion. She gets a secret sword thing, and that's how she's gonna beat the enemy. And then fights happening. And then, yay, she won. And now her battery is full. She's happy. She walks back over to her assignment. And now she gets XP when she like accomplishes something in the assignment. That's the story. I almost stopped share. Okay. So in brief explanation, that is the story. As you can see, a lot of those boards were super rough. So like with storyboards, you don't have to be super clear with anything. As long as you get the basic idea conveyed, hopefully, which I did in like however many minutes that took, that's what matters. Okay. Now with that, I'm going to pass it over to Alex to talk a little bit about modeling and shading for the short.
All right. Yes. So now that we're done with the pre-production steps, that's when we're gonna open our favorite program, which is Autodesk Maya. I'm going to show a set that was already sort of built out, but here is Maya in its glory. Everything's gray and unshaded. And we already have like some models complete here. So one thing I'm going to do is this lamp needs a lampshade. So I'm going to walk through how one might create that. So we start from everything with like really basic looking shapes. So if anyone's taken a geometry class, then you're already set to go for this step. So I'm going to just start with a cylinder since I want like a sort of cylindrical lampshade. And in this case, since we're building everything right in the scene file, I'm going to just move this over to where the base of our lamp is. Let's slide this up a little bit. So lampshades have like a hollow section on the inside. They're not just like completely solid cylinders like this. So I'm going to go and select all the faces here and delete them. Yeah, so in 3D space, all objects are represented by vertices, edges, and faces. And so that's like also something where it's like the principles of like math and geometry are kind of being reflected in the work that you do. And we'll be, all right, I've kind of hollowed out the cylinder. One thing is that in 3D software, the 3D models are always going to be like single-sided by default. So that's why it's like black on the inside here. So first, let's go get this into like our rough lampshade sort of shape. Sure, we can look at reference, figure out, look at our like concept art to figure out how we want this to look, but I think that's good enough. I'm going to give it a little bit of thickness so that it's not just like a completely flat sheet. Okay, that might be too thick, but you know, you can always adjust these things. And lastly, so you'll notice that there's like some hard edges on here. And so in order to, one thing that I could do is just hit this button to like add more polygons. Another thing that is supported by Maya and a lot of other 3D softwares is just like doing some subdivision preview so that it'll make our model look a little smoother. And voila, it's not the most realistic lampshade, but I think it'll do for this case. So we have a lampshade now. Our set's really coming together, you know. I'm going to hit the render button to get a preview of what things would look like after we render things. Most of our objects are already shaded, and you'll see what that means in a second. My laptop is screening. Yeah, and things are loading, and here we have our render. So as you can see here, we already have like a bunch of stuff that's shaded, has some beautiful colors attached and all that. It's very noisy to start with, but as the renderer samples the scene more, it'll get a little clearer. I don't totally, let's see, I see, like, you can tell that this really sticks out a lot though, because right now it's just still like a flat gray color, whereas like all these other props have some nice colors to them. So this is when we're going to do something called shading. And I'm going to go and attach a shader here. We use some technology developed by Pixar called Renderman in order to do all of our shading. And Renderman is really powerful because it gives you a lot of control over how the object will look, but also like it models real world surfaces in like very realistic ways. So for example, I'm just going to leave this render running, but we can go and change things like the diffuse color. Oh yeah, Zoom and Maya running at the same time is not always the best combination, so apologies for any delays. But I can go and change this to like give it a reddish color if we want it. I don't know, anyone have any colors they want to shout out that they really want this lampshade to look like? Or put it in chat, I guess. Suggestion.
Can you do green?
Sure, we can do a beautiful green.
Thank you.
All right, almost says pink. Both excellent ideas. So let's try green and pink and just see how that looks. So instead of just a flat color, I'm gonna generate a little texture ramp. We're gonna go from green on one end and then pink on the other. I will say, don't know if this, it'll have a very watermelon look to it, and that's kind of the mood. Don't know if that necessarily fits what we are going for, but it's something. Alrighty there. So that's beautiful. And that's just like one of the many attributes we can adjust. We can also do things like giving it like some reflection to like kind of mimic the appearance of like plastics or something, or we could make it like metallic by changing some other features of the shader. And yeah, that's like just the beginning. Honestly, there's like a ton of other features. Like we could make this like a really glassy looking lampshade if we so desire. I see that Brian has asked, how similar is this to Cinema 4D? I think like a lot of 3D softwares have like the same basic ideas, like the same basic concepts are very translatable between them because you're working with like models in 3D space and there's a lot of standards that have been set up, but things like keyboard shortcuts and like some exact tools are going to differ. But I've found that like moving between like Maya to like Blender or something like that, there's like still lots of transferable skills, even if like the UI and the controls are really different. Yeah, the underlying concepts are like still always the same. Okay, so this is kind of going a direction. Let's just bring it back a little bit to what we had before. And cool, there's our shaded lampshade. And one thing I just noticed was that this lampshade, there's no light coming from this lamp. And sure, like maybe we don't want the lamp to be on, but I kind of want it to have some light. So I'm gonna go and toss in a little point light, and the renderer truly is going to hate me for this. I'll toss in a point light, and we're going to go and position this roughly wherever. Cool. And hit the render button again, and we'll see a little bit of light coming out of this lampshade, assuming it loads. All right. Stunning, really. And there's like lots of controls you can do to like change how this light looks. Like if you wanted a warmer light, you can go and like change the color. And that's kind of just like some of the work that goes into setting up our animated film. All right. And now I'll pass it off to Akshata.
Okay, so that was a quick overview of modeling, shading, and lighting. So now I'm going to show you guys a little bit about rigging and animating. If my mouse will work. Okay, I was really scared my mouse died there for a sec. But yes, let's share screen and let's share. So here we go. This is the one of the character models that we used for the short, and this is the character rig. So as you can see, like we have the model in the back and we have all these different controllers. And what these controllers do, you'll notice the big one is the breathe one in the corner. I'm not gonna use that one for now though. These controllers basically allow us to move the model however we want. So like I can rotate these controllers and I'm able to move different parts of the character. And you can also switch the rig into different modes. I'm going to move my zoom bar just so I can actually see things. So like there with the legs, we can switch things from IK to FK. You don't need to know what that means, but basically it allows us to move the controllers in different ways. So like here, if I'm just moving this one controller, I'm able to get the foot to fully like deform and bend as though like it's stomping on the ground. But obviously I can like move this around all I want, but like Maya's not gonna remember that. We aren't able to make animation out of it. But this is the first step in being able to animate, because you always want to build a rig for your characters so you're able to model on, you're able to animate on top of that rather than on like the geometry that you created during the animation process. So going into animation itself, we're not going to touch legs even though they're both in different switches, and that might look really cringy to those of you who have animation experience. They're just going to stay there in different sets. But yeah, I'm just going to do a quick animation of this character waving hi. So I'm going to start with the elbow controller. I'm going to get it into a good starting position. So I'm just going to rotate the arm a little bit. That looks kind of wonky, but yeah, oh Jesus Christ. Okay, let's try this and then slightly less wonky, still kind of wonky, but you know what? It does the job. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this interface called the time slider. This is what we're gonna use to create animation. So I'm going to create a keyframe here. So this is gonna be our starting position. So now I'm gonna kind of arbitrarily go to frame 10. So this is where our next keyframe is gonna be. So I'm going to set the next position that I want the hand to go to being around here. And then I'm gonna set another keyframe. And what Maya does, so like if any of you are familiar with 2D animation, you know that you have to like draw different frames, and like after you like put them all together, then you're able to get the image of the illusion of motion by quickly sequencing through those different images. So in the case of 3D animation, however, Maya actually does the work for you. So look, movement is happening, guys. What a concept. I'm going to copy this keyframe and move it into just 10 more frames up, just so it goes back to the initial position. So, oh, I don't think I hit paste. There we go. Or maybe I didn't hit copy. One sec. Copy. Paste. Okay, so yeah, now this is all happening. So if I play, then you see, oh, well, that's weird. I think some weird, I'm gonna go into the graph editor and try to figure out what's going on there and probably edit the copying there. But yeah, you'll see that right now it's just like the one joint moving. There's a principle of animation called follow through. So I'm gonna add a little bit of offset motion on the wrist to make the movement less like robot-y and a little bit more like natural, where your wrist kind of follows along with your elbow as you're doing a wave motion. But really quickly, I'm just gonna open up the animation editor and the graph editor. I was going to open this up a little bit later, but basically this shows you the different, this is basically like a like graph representation of the motion that's happening in each controller. So with the controllers, you can move things side to side, forward and back. That's translation. You can rotate things. That's pretty self-explanatory. And you can scale things up and down. Those are what all these attributes are. So I'm just gonna delete these. I'm gonna copy in the graph editor just because it works a little bit better. Go to frame 20, repaste that. Okay, now hopefully that looks a little bit better. So I'm gonna close the graph editor now because I don't feel like using it right now, not gonna lie. So I'm gonna set my first keyframe at 1. Let's go 3 frame. So remember that our motion with the hand started right at frame 1. I'm going to start by having the hand kind of drag back a little bit. So even though the elbow is moving a little bit, the hand is taking a little bit longer to get there. So I'll set a keyframe there, 3 frames up. And then we have this next position, which is the arm closer. I'm going to set at 3 frames up again. When the arm is starting to move back, I'm going to have the wrist again kind of hang back a little bit. And then we go back to the end of the position, which is at frame 20. And then lastly, I'm going to set another frame, again, 3 frames up, just rotate it a little bit, just so it kind of is able to like ease in. So now if I play it, like see how there's a little bit more motion there and it doesn't look as like robotic. Theoretically, you can add as much nuance to this as you want, but for our purposes, it's fine. Last thing I'm going to do is so right now she's just doing like a single like wave. That's not very enthusiastic. So I'm going to go into, this is when I was planning to open the graph editor. So let's open that. And I'm going to copy this set of animation and I'm going to copy it over a few more times just so we're able to have her do multiple iterations of this motion. Oh, that does not look cute. Oh, that's why I'm on frame 23. But I have, wait. Let's start with this one and then let's select everything. Oh, there's a person, hello. Okay, so going to frame 20, I'm just going to copy this and then paste it. And then let's paste it 2 more times. Oh, that was not the right frame. In the graph editor, you always want to make sure you are on the right frame. Oh, I don't think, yeah, there we go. And then here. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the wrist. Just while I'm doing this, feel free to, if you have any questions in chat, to ask. I see someone asked, is the program a semester long or 2 semesters? So this isn't a minor program either, really. It's just a decal course. So you can use it I think some programs might allow you to use this as a major requirement. I don't actually know, but probably not. One iteration of basic UCBUGG is a single semester, but there's also an advanced track that you can take after taking your first semester if you're really interested. I think I might have pasted that one too many times. Let's find out. But yeah, you can take UCBUGG as many times as you like as well. So if you're really into the class after taking it a few times, you can take it as many times as you want.
Yeah, if you're in like CS at Berkeley, then there's like tons of different classes you can take when it comes to graphics. It's not like the biggest community, but it's definitely something that you can like specialize in if you're really interested in at UC Berkeley. Like UCBUGG is just one class that focuses more on like this fusion between the arts and graphics, but there's also things like CS 184 where you learn more about like the technological basis behind all the different like tools that we're using and various other courses.
Okay, so I basically in the time that we answered that question, if you want more details, we can talk. No, you do not need to be a CJS major for any of the classes. Anyone can take our decal. But yeah, I just hit all of the controllers from the rig just so you can see what her model looks like. And if I play in the animation, she's doing a little wave. She doesn't really look that enthusiastic, but maybe she's just a little shy. But yeah, that's animation. So I'm going to quickly pass it over to Ethan to talk about rendering and compositing really quickly. I stay shared, right?
Yeah, so basically, after you get all those movements defined, then you would do exactly what we saw in the viewport earlier when we were reviewing that the lamp shade with the shading applied to it. And you would actually make some frames that are less noisy than that just by spending more time and computer energy on rendering those final frames and then putting them together in a compositing software like Adobe After Effects. And so once you've done that, then you get a final film, which we will show to you guys now.
Yeah. Okay, let me stop sharing this. Pull up the other slide deck, if it will open. And hello. Okay. Let's share screen and share sound. But yeah, so that was the art of making an animated film in an hour. We didn't actually make that film in an hour because that took an entire semester of pain and struggles. But yes, I'm glad you enjoyed that. So we have 10 minutes left, so we'll spend the last remainder of our time answering questions. So I guess to kind of elaborate more on Alma's question before, because it is kind of really complicated. Like we said, there isn't actually an animation major at Berkeley. Like personally, I came into Berkeley, I was like, I'm gonna do animation, but like, how do you do that? So UCBUGG is the root of the basically three like 3D community at Berkeley, which is growing, but like it's still rather small. So you have UCBUGG where you can take the class over the course of the semester and learn everything you need to make a basic animated film. From that first set of basic curriculum, we actually have an advanced curriculum for people who either have a lot of 3D experience in all parts of the animation pipeline, or for people who have taken basic UCBUGG before. And in that semester, you learn a lot more advanced tools and how to kind of refine your practice and knowledge in order to create, gain better skills and make fancier films, basically. Yes, technically. However, in your to the Brian's question, can this all be done in this single semester? So this was a facilitator short. This wasn't a student short. So this was by people who had already learned the pipeline. So personally, me and Alex worked on this film along with like 10 other people around. So UCBUGG is traditionally done in teams of 4 to 5. And you can still make really good quality short films. Like if you go to our YouTube channel, some like nice plug there, but you can see a lot of our student work there. And a lot of the films are really nice, even though they are a little bit simpler in story. Honestly, with storytelling, a lot of the important stuff is just like, as long as your story reads clear and like the animation and design is nice, then you can have a really solid short, even if it isn't like super complicated or anything like that. Back to the, oh yes, thank you for linking that, Ethan. Yeah, go like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Back to the question, back to kind of elaborating on the 3D community. So after you take UCBUGG Advanced, there's actually a course called CNM 190, which is Advanced Digital Animation. It's offered every other year. So it's offered this year, which basically means you guys as freshmen, if you're interested in taking this course, if you take UCBUGG Basic your freshman year and then take UCBUGG Advanced your like second semester of freshman year, by your sophomore year, you'll be able to take CNM 190, which is the like top animation class. I say top animation classes, though it's not the only animation class, but the top 24 animation students in the entire like school is this program. And it's basically a year-long class in which students work together to create a like a 30-second long, so it's a little bit short, but there are leeways there. More on that if you actually take the course. Really like highly rendered, highly developed animated short film. And these, like I said, it's the like pinnacle of the 3D community experience. I personally was lucky enough to have been in your shoes. Right before my freshman year, I went to UCBUGG Cal Day, and I was told if I followed this path and did UCBUGG Basic my freshman year, and then did UCBUGG Advanced my second semester freshman year, that I could take CNM as a sophomore, and I did it. I was the only sophomore in the class. You could be like me. You could be the only sophomore in the class, and now I actually TA the class. Yes, you can. If you're a junior transfer, then you can take basic UCBUGG and then advanced UCBUGG in your junior year. Then if you are here for all of fall 2022 to spring 2023, then you should be good to take CNM if you're really interested and want to pursue that. There's no issues there. Additionally, we also have a club called 3D Modeling and Animation at Berkeley, long name. We also call it 3DMA. So basically that club hosts a bunch of different events related to 3D modeling and animation. Someone want to drop the Discord link in the chat. Basically the only requirement for membership is that you join the Discord. So if you want to learn more about 3D events that are happening around campus, that's definitely the place to go. We host like social events, networking events, animation panels, technical workshops going over different parts of the pipeline in more detail. They're covering like different animation tools. It's a bunch of fun stuff. And the people are really chill. Like I said, there's no real like membership requirement. You literally just need to join a Discord and then you're in. And then you have like access to a bunch of different resources that we offer. Like we recently acquired like a promotion to be able to have access to like a full sound library. So like through joining like these resources and kind of looking around, you're able to find like a lot of places in the 3D community, even though it is so small, but growing rapidly. So, and we would love to welcome you into the community because like I said, we just need more people to be able to kind of grow and like tell UC Berkeley that the animation matters at Berkeley, you know, because it does. It's just no one talks about it because it's not a major, but that does not is not any kind of detriment. Also, like you not being able to say you're an animation major isn't gonna like hurt your chances of anything.
If you're interested in pursuing animation or any of the surrounding parts of the field as a career, then what's important is developing a portfolio of
Yeah.
projects. It's not really what major you have. Although I know a lot of people in our classes are CS or art or film. That's generally if you actually want to do that as a career, but even if you're not, you can still do as much of this as you want.
Here, wait, I got the invite link for the Discord. So this is the 3D modeling and animation Discord. So basically, if you join that, you're set for the rest of like your fall semester. I don't know if you all SIR'd or not. I don't really remember how freshman and transfer admission works. But like, if you're guaranteed to be here, you might as well have access to a place where you can see a bunch of cool events happening. So definitely join. Other questions? Oh yay, I see people joining. I feel so validated. Thank you, thank you. That was everything about community stuff. Is there anything else we would, this is programmed by chance offer internships. We don't directly offer internships, but if we do, sometimes we do get contacted about different panel, like from different companies, or different opportunities from our like alumni, if they have like job opportunities or like projects. And whenever those happen, we always post them in the Discord if people are interested in applying to them. But like we don't like directly offer internships like via the organization, but there are always opportunities that come up.
I'm not sure, maybe this was your question, or maybe this was part of your question, but like, just to be clear, like we are students and we took this class and now we are teaching it. So in order to like take your chance at like running this course and getting involved that way, it's basically just a matter of taking it, learning everything, and then applying. And if you take basic and advanced, like most people who do that end up being facilitators. So
yeah, like as long as you're not like an awful person, which I'm hoping none of you are, like we'll probably take you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's another cool thing about UCBUGG is that like because it's student run, it's always growing and evolving, because like as the leadership continuously changes, we're able to build our curriculum. It's really nice because like people who take the course are able to be like, I really had a fun time here. I want to give back to this community. And like all of us were students at one point, and we all kind of like grew into these teaching positions. What materials are required for the program? So the main one is Autodesk Maya, which you should be able to get through a student license. Someone want to link the website. So on the UCBUGG website, there's an introduction to Maya Lab. And if you want to get a head start on Maya for whatever reason, I don't even know if y'all have your Berkeley emails out yet, but like you can technically register using your Berkeley email and get like a student license, and through the setup that's listed there. And theoretically, you could get a little head start on prepping. Additionally, we also use Pixar RenderMan, which you don't need to download right now, but again, it's free to download. So if you're interested, you can try it out, and that's for like our rendering engine. So if you're interested in like trying out shading, like specifically lighting, things like that, you can try that. But Maya itself also has its own lighting built within its system if you want to try that as well. And then we also use Adobe Suite. You all are new to Berkeley, so I don't know if like your old schools or old places do this, but all Berkeley students have access to an Adobe like Creative Cloud license. So I highly recommend you like get on that as soon as possible, because it is one of the most useful resources that Berkeley offers.
But just in general, everything you need for this class is free except for like your own laptop. You don't need a special laptop, special computer. It helps to have a nicer computer, at least just not like a really old computer.
You can take this
things
class
like this, but
like shitty MacBook Air. I took this class.
Yeah,
MacBook
you
Air.
can. If you really want to get into this stuff, consider investing in a slightly nicer computer, but you don't need it. Everything's free. You can take this class with any technology that you currently have.
If you guys are interested in, if you join the 3DMA Discord, then we can post the recording there. I'm totally fine with that. We do have a recording. Oh, and the other thing is just like get a mouse, invest in a mouse. That's again for later, but that's very important for any 3D software. Do not use your trackpad with 3D software. It's not fun. But yeah, we will post the recording in the 3DMA Discord if you guys are interested. So that link, if you scroll above, is right there. I'm going to post it again just in case any of you didn't join. The recording will be there in case you missed any part of the demo or want to like look at it again for whatever reason. It is 5:01, so I don't really know how Cal Week is going, but you probably have somewhere else that you want to be. So thank you all so much for coming. I hope you learned a lot and had fun. Hopefully, I mean, both me and Alex are graduating this semester, but hopefully Ethan will be able to see some of you guys in the fall.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this was super fun. Thanks, guys.